Okay, this screencast is going to cover how to actually create a book inside of InDesign. We'll start off with this text here, which is actually the Grimm's Fairy Tales by the Brother Grimm. For this particular project, if you'll notice, there are a lot of stories here in this particular collection. We're only going to actually create a couple chapter book using the first two stories within this compilation. So first task, whenever you're creating a book, is you want to go ahead and break up your chapters into individual text files. This will help you actually place these files in InDesign later. So we'll open this up, and to get started, we'll bypass the table of contents, and we'll find the first story, which is the Golden Bird. We'll copy that, and we'll place it in its own plain text file. Now, I'm using TextEdit here on the Mac, and when you create a new file in TextEdit, it's actually what's called a rich text file, or an RTF file. You can notice that the ruler and the tab stops are visible at the top of this page. You want to make sure you convert any file to a plain text before you paste in the copy. So I'll come up here to the Format menu and choose Make Plain Text. Then I'll paste in our first chapter, which is the Golden Bird. I'm going to save this to our project folder. I'll go ahead and name this Chapter 1 so I can reference it later. We'll do the same thing for Hans and Luck, which is the second story, and this will be our second chapter. Copy, create a new plain text file, paste it in, and save it as Chapter 2. Now, it's a good idea as you're breaking up a very large chapter-based book into smaller files to go ahead and take a look for each individual chapter and see if there's any sort of text that you may have to go back in and manually adjust or manually format as you're laying out the book. So in our case, for Chapter 2, there are two specific spots here where we have like a small bit of poetry. And so you can see that this formatting is completely different than your normal kind of paragraph formatting that we'll actually use for our book. So we'll want to make sure that we take a note later on that Chapter 2 is going to have a couple of considerations we'll have to come back and manually format. Okay, so we'll go ahead and hide that. Now we've got our two text files. The next step is we actually want to start setting up our document in InDesign. So we'll come back over here to InDesign and we'll create our book. So in this case, we're going to create a letter half size book, so almost like a paperback version of it. For my margins, I'm going to set my bottom margin to equal to 1 inch, or 6 picas as the case may be, and I'll click OK. Now what we're creating here is the document that will be used for our style source. Now the style source document, when we're creating a book, is the document in which all of the paragraph styles, character styles, object styles, table styles, and master pages or any text variables that you set up will be used to synchronize across all documents of your book. So this is actually a very important step. This is a chance for you to be able to set up any paragraph or character styles, any master pages that you need, and do it one time, and then you can utilize the synchronization options in the book panel to be able to synchronize all of those changes across the entire book at once. This saves you the trouble of having to go through and set up each of these styles manually for every single chapter of your book, which is very time consuming and tedious. So to get started, if we take a look at our chapters, you'll notice that it starts off with an actual title. So the first chapter is The Golden Bird, and then we've got a lot of different paragraphs. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create two separate paragraph styles. A paragraph style specifically for the chapter title, and a paragraph style for each individual paragraph. Now, I can set up my paragraphs or style my paragraphs using traditional typesetting where the first paragraph is flush, every subsequent paragraph is indented. For this particular assignment, though, I'm just going to make sure that every single paragraph in my chapters are going to be formatted the exact same way, which is kind of what you see here. I'm going to have a paragraph that is not going to be indented, but will actually include space after each paragraph. So it's kind of a modern formatting for paragraphs, if you will. So to get started, I'm just going to create some dummy text here that I can go ahead and format and use to create my paragraph styles. So I'll start here by just creating some dummy text for our chapter title. Hit return so I can create a new paragraph, and in my type menu I'm going to fill the rest with placeholder text. So this will actually fill Latin text that I can then use to style my regular body paragraph. So to get started, I'll go ahead and select or triple click on the first paragraph, which is actually the chapter title, and style it as I want each chapter title to look. So in my case, I want it to be centered. I want to go ahead and make it all caps. And you can change this up however you like, but the whole point of this particular exercise is, let's change that style to bold, is to get your text to look exactly the way that you want it, to get it representative. And then that way you can use the new style button to create the paragraph style that will mimic this particular formatting. So that's looking good. Just need to go ahead and we'll increase the font size a bit here to 18 points. And in my paragraph options, I'm going to increase the space after and say 14 points. So once I'm happy with the visual formatting for this particular paragraph, inside of my paragraph style, break this out here, inside of my paragraph style, I want to go ahead and create a new style. Now, since my paragraph is actually already selected, all I have to do now is simply click this button. It has now taken all of the formatting options that I have applied to that one paragraph and has now applied it to this paragraph style. So you'll notice in this paragraph style box it says that it's Adobe Castellan Pro, bold, 18-point size, it's centered, aligned, it's all caps, and the space after is 1 pica, 2 points. So I'm just going to rename this as chapter title and then click OK. Next, I'm going to go ahead and quadruple click the first paragraph so I can select the entire thing. And this is now, I'm going to style this as I want all of my body paragraphs to look. So in this case, I want to change maybe the typeface, the size, add a space after, as I explained earlier. So I'm going to make all of those visual formatting changes now. So we'll use the same Adobe Castellan, except this time it'll be regular. I'm going to make it 10 points with 14 points of leading, and also include 14 points of space after. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to go ahead and create, just as I did before, create a new style, double click on that, and name this body paragraph. And click OK. Now, the next step is I want to set up the next style option. Now, next style basically is a feature in InDesign which allows you to apply a style to the first paragraph of a body of text and then tell InDesign after it hits a new pilcrow or a new paragraph to switch to another style. So in other words, the first paragraph is going to be styled using this paragraph style. The next paragraph is going to be styled using a secondary style, and then after that secondary style is applied, you can tell it to then apply a third style, and on and on and on. And this is triggered by every single time InDesign comes across a new paragraph. Now in our case, we only have 2 particular styles, so what we'll do is that we'll tell InDesign after the chapter title style is applied, switch to the body paragraph style, and then style everything else in this particular text using the body paragraph style. This saves you a lot of time when it comes to formatting. So to set that up, first thing we want to do is edit the chapter title style. So we'll double click on that. And under the general options, you'll have a next style dropdown. We want to go ahead and change that to body paragraph. So once again, what we're saying is we could tell InDesign we want to apply the chapter title, and then we want it to go ahead and follow any instructions for the next style. So in this case, switch to body paragraph for the next paragraph. In the body paragraph style, it's already set to essentially loop through and continue using that same style. So this is all we need to do to make this change. We'll click OK. I'll go ahead and change everything back to basic paragraph here. And let's go ahead and test to see if the next style works. So we want to select all of our text. And to apply our next style, we want to right-click or control-click on the style we want to add for the first paragraph, in this case, chapter title. And we want to say, apply the chapter title, and then the next style. And there we go. It works. Our chapter title is applied using the chapter title style, and all subsequent paragraphs are using the body paragraph style. So that's it for paragraph styles. Next thing we want to do in our style source is we want to set up our master pages. So in our pages palette, we want to come over here. We actually want to set up our master pages. So I'm going to double click to edit the A master page. And here's what we're going to do. For our particular book, we're going to set up two elements in our master pages. We're going to set up a running header, and we're going to set up page numbers or folios. We're going to set both of those up into the A master. Now you can choose to create additional master pages if you want to apply certain elements, and that's fine. It's up to you. But for right now, just for this demo, I'm going to go ahead and set up in our master page both folios and running headers. So to get started, we'll go ahead and include the current page number as our folios or our page numbers. So I'll go ahead and choose my type tool, and I'm just going to create a text frame down here in the bottom left-hand corner of the page, and make sure I don't have any paragraph styles applied to that. And go up to your type menu and choose Insert Special Character Markers, current page number. Now this will insert an A, if you notice right here down at the bottom. And the A basically means that that's the current page number because this is the A master page. Next thing, I want to go ahead and style this the way that I want. So I'm going to go ahead and center it, align it center, and I'll bring up my text frame options. Now I pressed Command B on the keyboard. You can also find it under the type menu, or excuse me, the object menu. Text frame options is applied there. If I click on preview, what I want to do is vertically justify this to the center. And as far as my style, once again, I'll use the Adobe Castellan Pro, but I'll use bold and I'll leave it at 12 points. So then now every single page that uses the A master page should have, on the left facing page at least, a current page number. I want to go ahead and copy this. I'm going to hold down the Option key and drag a copy of that over to the right facing page, and now both my pages have current page numbers. We can check this by double clicking on the first page in our document, and sure enough it currently says page 1. So that sets up our folios. Next step is we actually want to set up running headers. Now, inside of InDesign, there's several different ways you can set up running headers. I like the easiest way, which is to let InDesign manage this for us. So in our case, a lot of books will end up with two different types of running headers on the facing pages. One facing page, like say the left facing page, would have the name of, say, the book. The right facing page would have, say, the name of the chapter. We're going to follow the same structure here. So we're going to switch it up a little bit. We're going to say the left facing page is going to be the name of the chapter, the right facing page is going to be the name of the book. Now in our case, we can use text variables in order to set this up. So to begin, we actually need to create a couple of text variables. So if we go to the type menu, we can come down to the text variables list, and we can choose to define new text variables. Now in the text variable box, you have some text variables that are currently set up for you by InDesign. None of these will actually work for what we want, so we're going to create a new one. So the new one that we want is, we're going to call this book title, and the type of text variable that we want is called custom text. In here we can actually put the name of the book. So in our case, the name of the book happens to be, let's see, where was it? Grimm's Fairy Tales. Down at the bottom, you'll see a preview of what that text will actually look like. Now, using text variables in this case is a good idea, because if at any point in time you want to make a change to any of these pieces of text, if you had just typed it in, made it static text, that means you'd have to go back and actually replace every single instance of this particular text across your entire book. That's time consuming. But if we use a text variable, we can later sync this text variable to every single one of our documents, and if we're using that text variable, what ends up happening is we just have to replace it one time here in the text variable options, resynchronize the book, and that change takes place across the entire document. So we'll click OK. So now we have our book title. We need to create another variable, and that's going to be for the running header. So click New, and we'll go ahead and call this Grimm running header. And under type, choose running header paragraph style. Now what's going to happen here is that the paragraph style running header allows us to tell InDesign that we want to use a specific paragraph style to target and create the entry for this particular text variable. So in our case, we're going to actually target the, let me come here, wrong drop down, there we go. We want to choose the chapter title paragraph style. So in this case, every single document that has a chapter title paragraph style applied to it, the running header is going to mimic the text for the chapter title. So we'll click OK, and then done. So now with both of our text variables set up, now it's just a matter of inserting them into our master page. So once again, grab your type tool, and I'm going to create my running headers by creating another text frame here, right underneath or in the foot of my document. Once again, clear any paragraph styles that are created. I'm going to go up to my type menu, go back to text variables, insert the variable. So on my left facing page, I actually want to use the Grim running header. You'll notice if it doesn't actually recognize, if InDesign doesn't recognize any of the paragraph styles that you have set for the running header, you'll have the name of the variable in brackets. So now I can go ahead and style this just like any text. So I'll say Adobe Pro, and we'll go ahead and make that regular. And I want to go ahead and set up the vertical justification on that as well to be centered. So there we go. I'll do the same thing on the right side, right facing page. Clear anything there. Go up to type. I'm going to go back to text variables, and I'm going to insert the book title. And just as before, we'll go ahead and use Adobe but this time I'll use Adobe Pro Italic and set its text frame options and center it there. And for this one, I will right align it. And that sets up our text variables. So once again, if we come back here to the first page, you'll notice Grimm's Fairy Tales, that's our custom text, is currently set up as a running header. If we add another page to our document, chapter title is currently set up as the variable for page 2. To show you how that's actually done, if I change the nature of the text that has that chapter title paragraph style applied to it, it changes it here in the text variable as well. So it's a really nice way by using text variables to go ahead and manage a lot of dynamic text within your document. Alright, so with that done, our style document is pretty much complete. We have set up paragraph styles, master pages, and text variables. We're going to use all of that information here in this source document to synchronize across our entire book. But we haven't saved it yet. So let's go ahead and save this as Chapter 1, because we'll actually use this particular document to lay in the content for Chapter 1. So come back here to Grimm's Fairy Tales, and we'll save that to our project folder. There we go. Now we don't need page 2 yet, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that, and I can go ahead and delete the sample text that I had set up. So now Chapter 1 is ready. The next step in creating a book is to set up individual empty InDesign documents for all the other content. So we're going to need to create 3 other InDesign documents. We're going to need to create another InDesign document for Chapter 2, one for our cover page, and another one for our table of contents. Now the only important thing about this is just to make sure that each InDesign document has the exact same trim and margin settings as your style source. Now some people will just do save as and use that option, but I like to actually just create blank InDesign documents and use the synchronization options later on to set up all of my other content. So go ahead and set up my letter half, make sure that my margin is set once again for 1 inch or 6 picas. There we go. Click OK. I'm going to save this one as Chapter 2.InDesign. And then using the File Save As option or Command-Shift-S on your keyboard, I'm going to save a copy of this document as my cover and as my table of contents. Close it. And now I've got all the InDesign documents I need to go ahead and set up my book. The next option is to actually create the book file in InDesign. So back in InDesign, go back up to the File menu, go to New, and this time choose Book. Notice there's no keyboard shortcut for this, so don't just simply hit Command-N. That'll create a document. We actually need to create a book file. So the book file, we want to go ahead and set up. We'll call this Grim, and we'll save that to our project folder. Notice the extension for the book file is not INDD, which is InDesign Document, it's INDB as in boy, which stands for InDesign Book. So we'll click Save here. And the book panel looks very unassuming. There's nothing in it at the moment. It's actually a very powerful panel. Right now what it's looking for is for us to be able to add all the InDesign documents that we created that will make up this book. So to do that, simply click the plus button, which is to add documents. And we'll go ahead and choose each of our InDesign documents and click Open. Now if you'll notice, this is how the book panel looks at the moment. It is listed all 4 of our particular documents. Unfortunately, it's listed it in alphabetical order. However, this is not the correct order of our documents for our book. The cover and the table of contents need to go before Chapter 1. This is an important point. Whenever you are creating these book files, you need to make sure that you rearrange these documents so that they are in the correct order. In fact, over here on the right-hand side, these numbers are not listing the number of the document, but rather the page number each document begins with. Now, each document is 1 page, so you notice Chapter 1 starts on page 1. Table of contents now starts on page 4. Furthermore, on here on the left-hand side, you'll see these different boxes that allow you to actually set this particular icon. Now, this is the style source icon. You need to make sure that this icon is to the left of whatever document has all of your paragraph styles, your master pages, and text variables that you set up previously. So in our case, it is set up correctly with Chapter 1. Now we need to actually come in here and reorganize our book panel so that it's in the right order. So I'm going to drag my cover up to the top and drag my table of contents right after the cover. Now I'm in the right order. The next thing that we'll want to do is we want to set up the right numbering and chapter options. So if you look, once again, our table of contents starts on page 2. Now our Chapter 1 starts on page 3. Well, normally in books, Chapter 1 actually begins with page 1. And a table of contents, while may start also with a page 1, is usually denoted with a different type, like say lower Roman numerals. So we're going to change this up a bit. So double click on the page number to bring up the document numbering options for our table of contents. We're going to tell this document that it needs to start with page 1, but the style of that numbering needs to be lower Roman numerals. And click OK. Notice it now changes to a lowercase I. Also, Chapter 1 now begins on page 2. If we double click on the page number for Chapter 1, we'll bring up the document numbering options for this document. We'll tell this one to also start on page 1. We'll leave the style with your typical Latin numerals. And we'll come in here and we'll also tell it that this is the beginning of Chapter 1. Now this is important if you're specifically using chapter numbers in any of your running headers or your documents. But even if you're not, it's a good idea to go ahead and also make sure that Chapter 1 begins as Chapter 1 in your numbering options. So I'll click OK. And now you'll see Chapter 1 begins with 1. Chapter 2 is now page 2, because once again, they're 1 page each. Now because Chapter 1 and table of contents were open when we made these changes, denoted by these dots, you'll notice that the little asterisk tells me that both of these documents have not been saved. The changes have been made, but they're not saved. So I'm going to go ahead and save these. And I'm going to close the table of contents because our next step, now that we have all of our numbering options ready to go, is to go ahead and add our content. But actually, before we do that, let's sync all of our styles, our master pages, and our text variables that we have set up in Chapter 1. So once again, make sure Chapter 1 is set up as your style source. Select all of the documents in your book. And from the book menu, choose Synchronize Options. We want to choose this because by default, InDesign will not sync your master pages. So make sure you check that, then click Synchronize. InDesign will now open each one of the documents, synchronize your master pages, your paragraph styles, character styles, object styles as well if you set those up, and any of your text variables. So if we click OK, just to make sure it did that, if we double click on Chapter 2, Chapter 2 should be open, and now in our paragraph style box, sure enough, chapter title and body paragraph came over just fine. So it worked. Now we're ready to start adding our content. So we will go up to File and click Place to place our text document. Now you don't want to just simply copy and paste from a text document. You actually want to use Place. In the Place window, first things first, check Show Import Options. This will become apparent in a moment. We're going to select our Chapter 1 text and click Open. The next window you see are the text import options. In this, we are able to actually set a specific character encoding for this text document. Now, this is important, especially if you're importing text that you may have copy and pasted from, say, Microsoft Word. There may be characters that are actually applied to your text file that are not in the default Latin 1 encoding. You want to make sure that your character set is changed to Unicode UTF-8. This will ensure things like typographer's quotes or odd punctuation marks, maybe dashes, M dashes, N dashes, things along these lines, are also carried over, and that they're not converted to odd encodings. Everything will look exactly the way they should. Furthermore, because this is a text document, we have the ability to remove any extra carriage returns. So we want to remove at the end of every line and between paragraphs. We'll click OK. And now our our cursor changes to a preview of our text. In order to make life easier on yourself, if you hold down the Shift key, your cursor will show a curved arrow. This is the Autoflow feature. If you hold down the Shift key and click in the top left-hand margin, what will happen is InDesign will add as many pages as necessary to lay out this text. Now if you notice, I accidentally had the chapter title paragraph style selected when I had done this, so obviously everything has been given that specific style. That's a mistake, but that's okay, one that we can rectify. So it also has added 21 pages worth of text. So to correct this, we'll go ahead and select all the text inside of our document, and I'm going to go ahead and put everything back to a basic paragraph, just the default. Now, using your next style, we'll right-click on chapter title, apply the chapter title and the next style options, and now everything should be styled here in chapter 1. And of course, because of the way that it was placed earlier, I have now created additional pages which I do not need. So I'm going to go here and select page 7 all the way down to page 21, which are all empty, and delete them. And you can see immediately the text variables are working properly, and chapter 1 is now laid out. Let's go ahead and lay out chapter 2. So I'll double click on chapter 2 here from the book panel. Go to File, click Place, or once again Command D if you're in the keyboard shortcuts. Choose my chapter 2 text. Make sure my text import options that Unicode is selected, and I'm removing my carriage returns. Basic paragraph is currently selected here, so this shouldn't be an issue. There we go. Autoflow, select all the text, and apply the chapter title and then the next style. There we go. Now in this case, I want to make sure that I don't have any overset text. Come over here. Doesn't look like 11. In fact, I have an extra page again. So I do have one extra page. Now before I go and remove this page, if you remember, chapter 2 had a couple of considerations. There were 2 short poems in this particular chapter that I'm going to have to go back in, locate and manually format. So let me see if I can find those. Oh, here's the first one. O'er hill or o'er dale, so happy I roam, work light and live well. All the world is my home, then who is blithe so merry as I? So to start this off, I'm just going to come in here and just manually adjust this. Now, if you'll notice, I'm removing extra spaces and adding a carriage return, adding a new paragraph for each one of these. Now if you'll notice, because it is still using the body paragraph style, I have all this extra space. So as I said, I'm just going to manually adjust this. I'm going to go ahead and select these first 4 of the 5 paragraphs of the poem, and I'm just going to remove that extra spacing. There we go. I'm going to select all 5, and I'm actually going to add a little bit of inset spacing to the left hand side, so I'm going to put 14 points there. There we go. That looks good. Next I want to go ahead and find the second poem, or maybe that was the second poem. Let's see. Oh, yep, here's the first poem. I missed that earlier. Do the same thing here. Remove the spacing, add 14 points of space on the left hand side, and there we go. Now I want to make sure that those changes did not add or push any text over. Did not. So once again, this page 12 is not required. So I'll come over here and delete page 12. And now chapter 2 is done. Next, cover page. Now the cover page doesn't really need a running header or a page number, so I'm going to use my None master page and drop that onto page 1. That'll go ahead and remove the runner and the page number. So for this one, I'm just going to go ahead and set the text for the book title. Now because I've already created a text variable, I can come up here and choose Type, Text Variables, Insert Book Title. There we go. And that's done. Now I can also format it the way that I'd like. And we'll say Adobe Castellan Pro, maybe bold italic, and maybe set it up to be 24 points. And there's my cover page. Now, of course, I probably want to do a byline or something else if I was doing this in real life, but for right now, this will do. Save that. So now I'm done. I've got my cover set up, I've got my chapter 1, and I have my chapter 2. The next thing I want to do is set up my table of contents. So if I double-click on the table of contents, everything is set up and ready for me to use. However, there's a couple of considerations when you create a table of contents in a book. The first thing is you do not want to use the same paragraph styles that you are using to style the rest of the book to style the entries in your table of contents. So the first step in creating a table of contents is you want to actually create a separate set of styles for the title of the table of contents and for any entry in your table of contents. Secondly, you also want to make sure you set up any sort of character styles for the page number for each entry. So to get started, just like what we did in the style source document or chapter 1 early on, we want to go ahead and just create some dummy text that we can then use to style or create paragraph styles specifically for the title of our table of contents and for the entry. At the same time, I'm also going to create a character style for the page number. So here's the table of contents title. This is an entry. And I'll go ahead and hit Tab and put a dummy page number so that we can style everything. So to begin with, I'll go ahead and select the table of contents style. Now there's a couple different ways that you can do this. You can of course use the paragraph styles that you have already synced and maybe duplicate the chapter title style if you want it to look the same way, or base another style on the chapter title style. There's any number of ways you can do this, as I said. But I'm just going to recreate some of the styles here. A little space after. There we go. That looks good. And I'm going to go ahead and create this as a new paragraph style. There it is. Paragraph style 1. Now in this case, I don't want to name it TOC title. I actually want to name it T lowercase o and C. The reason why I use a lowercase o is that by default, even though you can't see it, InDesign actually ships with a default TOC title style. It is only visible when you're actually creating a table of contents. So this lowercase o will give us a good visual kind of contrast between the one we're creating and the one InDesign wants you to use. So I'll go ahead and call this table of contents style, or title, excuse me. Click OK. There we go. Next thing I want to do is to edit the entry. So to get started, we'll go ahead and style this. Once again, Adobe Castellon Pro. We'll use it regular. I'll go ahead and leave it at 12 points, which is fine. We'll do the space after, also be 14 points. And I want to style the page number to be semi-bold italic. That looks good. Next thing I want to do is I want to bring up my tabs so I can create some leaders here. And we will set up a right justified tab and set a leader like that. Now all of these options will actually carry over into our paragraph style. So now with our paragraph styles, our paragraph actually styled the way we want it, I want to name this a new paragraph style, and I'll call this table of contents entry, like so. Furthermore, I need to actually change the style for my page number into a character style. So in the character style, and do not get these two confused. Character styles are character styles, paragraph styles are paragraph styles. Don't get them mixed up. Character styles, all I need to do is just select the text that I've styled. Once again, click New Style, and I'll call this Table of Contents Page Number. Okay, now with our 3 styles created, I'm going to go ahead and delete this, and now it's time to actually generate our table of contents. So if we go up to Layout and choose Table of Contents, we now have the Table of Contents option window available. Now we're not actually creating a separate style. We'll do this later when we talk about EPUBs, but for right now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a title. Now the title is the text that is actually going to be displayed up here at the top of your table of contents. Right now it's just simply contents. I'm going to call this Table of Contents. The style we want to use is that new TOC title. Notice T uppercase O, C title also exists. This is a hidden style that InDesign creates only for table of contents. So that's why we created this other one with the lowercase o, so we can differentiate between the two. Next, in the styles and table of contents, basically what InDesign is asking you here is to select the paragraph styles in your book that you want to use to generate the entries. So in our case, we want each chapter title to be an entry in our table of contents. So we'll add the chapter title paragraph style, and over here on the right, choose More Options. This will give us all the options that we want to be able to use to style this entry. To begin with, down here at the bottom, with chapter title selected, we're able to actually select how we want this entry styled. So the style itself is going to be the table of contents entry. We want the page number to be after the entry, and we want to style the page number using the character style. Now notice the page number and the option that comes after it, which is between entry and number. These two particular options are only available to be styled using character styles, which is why, once again, when I created the table of contents styles a second ago, I created a specific character style just for the page number. This next option here allows you to choose what sort of white space or characters you want between the entry, the text of the entry, so our chapter titles, and the actual page number. Now this little character right here, the little caret and a T, is InDesign's way of saying a tab, a regular tab. Now that's great, except for the fact that what we really want is we want that page number to actually go all the way to the right edge of the margin. So in order for us to do that, let's go ahead and get rid of that tab. And using this arrow, we actually want what is called a right indent tab. That is a single tab character. That means any text that follows a tab will be placed all the way over on the right edge of the text frame, which is exactly what we want. This is denoted by a Y instead of a T. Next, we want to make sure that we include all book documents for InDesign to search and generate table of contents entries. When you have this done, click OK. InDesign will look through the entire book and generate your table of contents. Simply click, and there you go. The Golden Bird begins on page 1. Hans and Luck begins on page 7. We will save this, and now our book is complete. To finish your book, go back to your book panel, select all your documents, and from the book menu, what we'll want to do is package the book for print. InDesign will process each and every document. It'll then give you a pre-flight summary. Make sure if you have any RGB images or any duplicate spot inks or anything like that, all that information will be displayed here. For right now, everything looks fine. We'll click Package. Don't have any instructions. We'll continue. And it's going to ask us where we want to save the package folder. Well, we'll go ahead and save that in our project folder. We'll name it Grim folder. We want to make sure we include any fonts or linked graphics. Furthermore, we want to also include IDML files, which means that InDesign will take each of our InDesign documents and save them down as an IDML file. This will allow anybody who has earlier versions of InDesign to be able to open up our book. We'll also include a print PDF. The preset that we're going to use for this is going to be Press Quality. And we'll click Package. Click OK for the font warning. And InDesign will now prepare, save, downsave to IDML, create the package folder, then generate the PDF, and place all of that inside of our project folder. And there it is, including a proper PDF of our book. And that's it. That's how you create a book in InDesign.